Homeowner associations are supposed to keep neighborhoods in order. But what happens when a person in charge is an absolute dictator? When Karen declared war on my driveway, I had no choice but to bring out the big guns. Literally, let us know where you're watching from. Have you ever dealt with an out-of-control homeowner association or horrible neighbor? Drop your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more. There's nothing quite like waking up to a bright, peaceful morning, only to find a bright orange homeowner association violation stuck to your front door, fluttering in a breeze, like a middle finger from the universe. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a wrong address, a misunderstanding. But then I saw the name stamped on the bottom in bold, smug letters. Karen Wilkinson, Homeowner Association President. Now, if you've ever lived in an homeowner association-controlled neighborhood, you already know that name. It's the name of doom, the name of unnecessary power trips, petty enforcement of ancient rules, and in Karen's case, a never-ending mission to control every square inch of the community like she was some kind of suburban dictator. I ripped open the notice and skimmed through it, my annoyance deepening with every word. Violation. Unauthorized vehicle obstruction. What? My driveway was perfectly fine. I park my truck there every night, just like I have for the past 6 years. And suddenly, it was an issue. I looked out my window to see Karen herself standing across the street, arms crossed, lips pursed, and that signature Karen scowl that curdled milk. Next to her, holding a clipboard and looking slightly apologetic, was Mark, the homeowner association treasurer. Poor guy. Always seemed trapped in Karen's schemes. I stormed outside, waving the violation in the air like a battle flag. Karen, what the hell is this? I demanded. She gave me that patronizing "I'm doing what's best in the neighborhood" look and sniffed. Your vehicle is an eyesore, and it's violating the visual integrity of the community, she declared, as if she were reading from some sacred homeowner association scripture. I glanced at my truck, spotless, parked perfectly in my own driveway, not sticking out, not blocking anyone, and yet, I echoed, incredulous, it's a 2022 Silverado, not a rusted-out junker on cinder blocks. It's blue, Karen said, as if that explained everything. We have a neutral color palette requirement for vehicles visible from the street. I blinked. Excuse me. Page 47, subsection D of the Homeowner Association Guidelines, she said smugly. Vehicles parked in driveways must align with the established color harmony of the neighborhood. That's not a real rule, I shot back. Oh, but it is, she said, eyes gleaming. The board voted on it last month. I turned to Mark, who looked away quickly, guilt practically dripping off him. You voted for this? I asked. He cleared his throat. I abstained. Karen sighed. Regardless, the rule is the rule. You have 48 hours to repaint your truck or move it into your garage. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines. I stared at her. Escalating fines over a blue truck. She smiled, an expression so self-satisfied it made my blood pressure spike. That's correct. My hands clenched in 2 fists. I wasn't about to roll over for this madness. You're out of your mind if you think I'm paying a fine for this. Oh, I know you pay, she whispered, or the homeowner association will have no choice but take legal action. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. We'll see about that. Her smirk didn't waver. Yes, we will. And with that, she turned on her heel and marched off, already plotting her next move. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I was already planning mine. And this was just a beginning. Because if Karen wanted to cheat, I was more than ready to get nuclear. I woke up the next morning ready to head to work, only to be greeted by a new level of homeowner association insistence. Parked dead center across my driveway like a fortress of arrogance was Karen's Lexus SUV. Not on my property. Oh no, she was too clever for that. But right in front of my driveway, completely blocking my exit. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and then blinked again, hoping I was just imagining it. But there it was, shimmering in the morning sun. A symbol of Karen's pettiness. I stormed outside, only to find Karen standing across the street, sipping a cup of coffee like she was watching the morning news. "Move your car," I called, already feeling my blood pressure spike. She took a long, exaggerated sip before answering. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. "Absolutely not. Not sorry. My car is legally parked on a public street. Is there a problem?" I clenched my jaw. "Yes, there's a problem. You're blocking my driveway." She gave me a mocking smile. "That's unfortunate. But it's not against homeowner association rules." I glanced up and down the street. Technically, she was right. She hadn't parked on my property, but she had parked so close to my driveway that there was no way I could back out without taking out her bumper. I pulled out my phone and dialed a non-emergency police number. "You can call all you want," Karen said cheerfully. "They won't tow a legally parked car." A few minutes later, an officer arrived. He took one look at the situation and sighed. Like a man who had dealt with Karen before. "Technically, she's not breaking the law," he admitted reluctantly. "She's parked legally. But she's blocking me on my own property," I argued. The officer shrugged, looking just as frustrated as I felt. "I agree. It's obnoxious. But if she doesn't physically block you from entering or exiting, there's not much we can do." "So, what? She can just park there forever?" I demanded. "Legally, yes," he admitted. "Morally, she's a nuisance." He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this is ridiculous. Just move your car." Karen grinned. "Oh, but I'm legally parked, officer. I don't have to move for personal convenience." I stared at her, actually speechless. Karen was enjoying this way too much. The officer shook his head. "I'll put in a report, but this is a civil issue." And with that he left, leaving me furious. I needed to get to work. I had places to be. I called a tow truck, only to have the driver arrive, take one look at Karen, and immediately hesitate. "Oh, sorry," he muttered. "I can't tow a homeowner association board member's car, unless it's illegally parked." "Seriously?" I said. He gave me a guilty look. Let's just say she's got influence. I'd lose my contract with the homeowner association." Karen waved at me. "Oh, were you trying to tow my legally parked vehicle? That's unfortunate." I felt my last shred of patience snap. That's when my neighbor Mike, a retired Marine, stepped onto his porch. "What the hell is going on?" he called. "Karen's blocking my driveway," I explained. Mike glanced at Karen's smug face, then at the blocked driveway, and immediately looked disgusted. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. "Hang on." He disappeared into the garage and came back holding a hydraulic jack. "What are you doing?" I asked as he walked toward Karen's car. "You'll see." Karen immediately panicked. "What are you doing with that?" "Oh, nothing," Mike said casually, "just checking your tire pressure." He knelt down, positioned the jack under Karen's front axle. "Don't touch my car," Karen shrieked to Mike. Said innocently, "But I thought it was a public street." Karen lunged forward, blocking him. "You can't mess with my car." "Oh," Mike said, grinning. "So suddenly, it's a concern when someone interferes with your vehicle?" Karen's face turned red. "You can't just jack up my car." "I sure can," Mike said cheerfully. "This street is public property, right? And I'm not damaging anything. I'm just examining the pavement." I'll call the police," Karen screeched. "Go ahead," Mike said. "I'll tell them you're intentionally trapping your neighbor on his own property," Karen stammered. Realizing she was suddenly on the defensive, she grabbed her keys, stomped over to her car, and peeled out of there, tires screeching. I turned to Mike. "That was amazing. I hate homeowner associations," he said simply. "Let me know if she pulls anything else." I had no doubt that she would, but she had just made a huge mistake. Because now, this wasn't just a fight between me and Karen. The whole neighborhood was watching. I thought Karen's driveway stunt was as low as she could go. I was wrong. The next morning, I arrived at work only to find chaos in the parking lot. My boss, Dave, was pacing back and forth, waving around a clipboard like it was a live grenade. What's going on?" I asked, stepping out of my truck. "You tell me," he snapped, shoving the clipboard into my hands. It was a notice from the city. Effective immediately, our company's fleet permit was revoked. That meant our delivery trucks couldn't operate. No deliveries, no shipments, no work. And because I was the one listed as the permit administrator, Guess whose name was on the revocation notice? Mine. My stomach dropped. This has to be a mistake, a blunder. Dave ran a hand through his graying hair. The city says our permit is invalid because of an undisclosed zoning complaint. You're in charge of compliance. How the hell did this happen? I was scrambling for an answer when I spotted Karen. She was parked across the street, sitting in her Lexus, watching. The moment our eyes met, she smiled just a little, then drove away, understanding. Hit me like a hammer. She did this, I muttered. What? Dave? Snapped the homeowner association president. She's been trying to mess with me for days. And now she's targeting my business. He thundered. You better fix this fast. I drove straight to City Hall, where I spent the next 2 hours in a bureaucratic nightmare. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint about my property. Since my truck was registered under my business, she falsely claimed I was running a commercial operation from my home violating residential zoning laws. The complaint was fake, but City Hall had no choice. They had to review it, which automatically triggered a temporary suspension of our fleet permit. I was furious. She wasn't just trying to bother me, she was actively trying to destroy my livelihood. I needed a way to fight back, but I couldn't just react anymore. I needed a plan. That's when I found it. The legal gap. I spent the rest of the day reading homeowner association regulations, looking for anything that would let me hit Karen where it hurt. And then, buried in an obscure municipal ordinance, I found the perfect counterattack. Something so bizarre, so legally airtight, that Karen wouldn't be able to stop it. That night, I sat down with Mike and my buddy Jeff, who happened to be a lawyer. You're going to do what? Mike asked, raising an eyebrow. I grinned. I'm going to park a tank in my driveway. When I told Mike and my lawyer buddy Jeff that I was buying a tank, they thought I was kidding. I wasn't. Thanks to my deep dive into homeowner association bylaws and obscure city ordinance, I discovered a loophole. While the homeowner association had strict rules against business vehicles, boats, and oversized trucks, it did not prohibit decommission military vehicles. In other words, I could park a tank in my driveway and be 100% within my legal rights. So I did. 2 weeks later, on a crisp Saturday morning, a flatbed truck rumbled into the neighborhood carrying a fully intact street-legal FB432 armored personnel carrier. It was just big. It was magnificent. The camo paint job gleamed in the sun. Its heavy tracks looked ready for war. And the turret, which no longer worked, still gave an intimidating presence. As soon as the truck pulled up, the entire neighborhood gathered to watch. Phones came out. Kids ran up, wide-eyed. Even people who normally kept to themselves wandered over, murmuring in awe. That's when Karen stormed out her house, already yelling. What is that? She screeched, her voice hitting a pitch that probably killed some local birds. I waved at her cheerfully. Morning, Karen. Just parking my totally legal personal vehicle. The flatbed operator, a burly guy named Tony, grinned as he started lowering the tank onto my driveway. You sure know how to make a statement, buddy. Karen spun to face him. You can't deliver that. That's a war machine. Nope, I said, pulling out the official paperwork. Decommissioned. No weapons. Just a historic personal vehicle. Completely legal under city and homeowner association rules. Karen snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them frantically. Her face twisted in horror as she realized I wasn't bluffing. You can't be serious. I patted the tank's metal plating. Oh, I'm serious. She turned bright red. This is ridiculous. You can't just park a tank in your driveway. Oh, but I can. I smiled. And I will. By now, more neighbors had gathered, whispering and laughing. That's actually kind of amazing, someone muttered. I want one. My kid won't stop talking about it, another said. Honestly, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened in this neighborhood. I saw several people recording, and that's when I knew this was going viral. Karen could harass me with homeowner association rules all she wanted, but now she was a villain. In a public spectacle she couldn't control. Her eyes darted around as she realized she was losing support. This is a residential area, she shrieked. We have standards. That's when a local news van pulled up. I grinned. Oh, Karen, you have no idea what's Coming next, if Karen thought she could intimidate me into submission, she had wildly miscalculated. The internet. The local news segment about the homeowner association president losing her mind over a legal tank took off faster than a greased-up squirrel on roller skates. Within 24 hours, the video was all over social media. The comments were merciless. "This is peak homeowner association nonsense. Dude, just out Karen a Karen. Respect. If my neighbor parked a tank, I'd bring out the grill and call it a block party." And then came the memes. Oh, the hilarious memes. Someone edited Karen standing in front of my tank like she was trying to stop the Tiananmen Square protest. Another one had her face plastered onto a dictator's body with the caption, "Homeowner Association the final boss." By day 2, influencers were making reaction videos. Some guy on TikTok dressed as a drill sergeant shouting at Karen through his phone. Veteran groups, history buffs, and even a few retired tank operators chimed. In the verdict, Karen was on the wrong side of history. That's when the Homeowner Association board panicked. The next morning, an emergency meeting notice was taped to every mailbox. The message was clear. Karen was scrambling to change the rules. Before things got worse, she had officially lost control. That evening, I showed up at the Homeowner Association clubhouse with Mike, my lawyer buddy Jeff, and a surprise guest, 2 members of a local veterans organization who had seen the viral video and decided to support my cause. The room was packed. More neighbors had turned up than I had ever seen at a homeowner association meeting, and judging by their expressions, they weren't here to support Karen. Karen stood at the podium, flanked by her usual followers trying to salvage her falling authority. "This meeting is to discuss an emergency amendment to our neighborhood's vehicle policy," she announced, voice tight. "We need to place restrictions on military vehicles in residential areas." A murmur of disapproval rippled through the crowd. "Let me get this straight," I said, stepping forward. "You want to rewrite the rules of the entire homeowner association just to get rid of my tank?" Karen's eye twitched. "It's about maintaining the harmony of the neighborhood." A man in the back, Mr. Henderson, who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, crossed his arms. "Harmony? You mean like the time you tried to fine me because my lawn furniture wasn't attractive enough?" A few people laughed. Karen ignored them. "The board has already drafted an amendment. Once voted in, all military vehicles must be removed within 48 hours. I smirked. "Let's see it." Karen slid a printed copy of the amendment across the table. Jeff, my lawyer buddy, picked it up, scanned it, and immediately started laughing. "Wow," he said. "This is impressively foolish." Karen stiffened. "Excuse me." Jeff turned to the room. "Karen here is trying to rush a vote on a rule change that would take effect immediately. But what she doesn't seem to understand is that homeowner association amendments require 75% community approval rate. That means you need the majority of the neighborhood to vote in favor of this." Karen froze. The color drained from her face. "Let's put it to a vote," I said. "Raise your hand if you think the tank should stay." Every single hand in the room shot up. Karen gasped like a fish out of water. "What?" Mike leaned over. "Hey, Karen, quick math question. What? 75% of everybody except you?" The room erupted in laughter. Karen slammed her fist on the table. "This isn't funny. This is my neighborhood. I make the rules." A deep voice rumbled from the back. "Not anymore. You don't." It was Colonel Sanders, not the chicken guy, an actual retired military colonel, one of the veterans who had come to support me. He stood up, arms crossed, towering over Karen. "Ma'am, I served this country for 30 years, and I'll be damned if I let a glorified mall cop tell me what's appropriate in a free country." The room erupted into cheers. Karen looked around, desperate for support. Even her followers were avoiding her gaze. She had officially lost. I leaned forward. "Karen, I'd love to stay and chat, but I have a tank to polish." With that, I walked out, leaving Karen to suffer in her own humiliation. And just like that, the homeowner association had turned against her. But Karen wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. When I heard the unmistakable sound of a diesel engine roaring outside my house at 2 a.m., I knew something was wrong. I rolled out of bed, groggy and confused, and peeked through the blinds. Headlights illuminated my driveway. At first, my sleep-fogged brain thought someone was trying to steal my truck. But then I saw it. A tow truck. A massive, rusted-out tow truck with its crane arm already lowering toward my tank. And standing right next to it, waving frantically like some kind of deranged traffic controller, was Karen. My exhaustion disappeared in an instant. She was trying to steal my tank. I threw on some shoes, grabbed my phone, and stormed outside. "Hey!" I shouted. The tow truck driver, a grizzled guy in a stained tank top, jumped in surprise. He looked at me, then at Karen. "You said this was abandoned," he snapped at her. Karen flinched. "It is." He wasn't supposed to be awake. I wasn't supposed to be awake. "You seriously thought you could just tow a tank on my driveway in the middle of the night?" I snapped. Karen crossed her arms. "I warned you about disrupting the neighborhood. If you won't remove it, I will." The tow truck driver muttered a curse under his breath. "Lady, you didn't say nothing about this being a tank. This thing weighs over 15 tons. So?" Karen huffed. "You're a tow truck driver? Tow it." The man looked at her like she had 3 heads. "I tow Hondas, not armored personnel carriers. This ain't going to budge." "You have a tow truck?" she screamed. "Figure it out." I folded my arms, watching the scene unfold with pure amusement. "Yeah, go ahead, tow it." The driver sighed and hooked his winch to the tank. He climbed back into his truck, revved the engine, and hit the gas. The tow cable went taut, and then nothing happened. The truck tire spun uselessly, kicking up gravel. The tank didn't move an inch. The driver muttered another curse. "Ain't no way," he grumbled, cranking up the power. His engine roared, the wind whistled, and then bang. There was a loud snap as the tow cable snapped clean in half, whipping backward and smashing through Karen's mailbox. Karen screamed. The tow truck lurched backward, the driver fighting for control. The truck front wheels lifted off the ground for a moment before slamming back down. The driver immediately killed the engine and jumped out, furious. "Hell, no," he shouted. "You didn't say nothing about military equipment. I'm out." Karen lunged toward him. "You can't leave. You're supposed to get rid of it, lady. You can get rid of it your own self." He climbed back into his truck, slammed the door, and sped off, leaving Karen standing in the middle of the street. I burst out laughing. Karen whirled on me. "This isn't funny." "Oh, but it is," I said, grinning. "You just got abandoned by your own tow truck guy. That's got to be embarrassing." Her face contorted in rage. You set this up?" "Yeah," I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. I telepathically forced you to hire an unlicensed tow truck to try and illegally steal my property? Great logic, Karen." She turned bright red. "This isn't over," she snarled. "Oh, I hope not," I said, because I recorded everything. I held up my phone, still recording Karen's eyes. "Why didn't you? You can't film me." "Oh, but I can," I said cheerfully. "This is my property. You and your buddy just tried to commit grand theft auto. I'm sure the police will love to see this." Her mouth opened and closed, struggling for a response. "This is defamation," she finally spat. "Nah," I said, "this is proof that when the red and blue lights flashed down the street, someone had already called the cops." Karen's entire body froze. She turned to run back to her house, but it was too late. 2 officers stepped out of their patrol car, looking at the snapped tow cable, the broken mailbox, and Karen standing in the middle of a mess. Well, one of them said. "What do we have here?" I grinned. "Officer, I'd like to report an attempted theft of military property." Karen's face drained of color. She had finally gone too far. As the police cruiser's flashing lights bathed the street in red and blue, Karen's once unshakable shield of authority finally cracked. The officer stepped out, surveying the wreckage. The snapped tow cable, the broken mailbox, and the massive decommissioned tank sitting peacefully in my driveway, untouched. "All right," one of the officers said, adjusting his belt. "Somebody want to explain what's going on here?" Before I could answer, Karen launched into a furious rant. "This man is a threat. He's ruining the neighborhood. He has a tank, and he's. Ma'am, the officer interrupted, uninterested. We got a call about a possible vehicle theft. You want to tell us why there a tow truck involved? The tow truck driver had fled, but the evidence was everywhere. I stepped forward, calm and collected. It's simple. Officer Karen hired an unlicensed tow truck to try and take my legally owned vehicle off my property in the middle of the night, without my consent. I held up my phone, and I have it all on video. One of the officers took my phone, playing the footage aloud. Karen's voice blared through the tiny speaker, screaming at the driver to tow it. Already the officers exchanged a look. That was all it took. Ma'am, the lead officer sighed, pulling out his notepad. Is there a reason you thought you could just take someone else's property? Karen's eye twitched. It's a tank. He can't just have a tank. Actually, I said, grinning, he can. It's legally registered and compliant with both homeowner association and city law. But you just tried to commit grand theft auto. A murmur spread to the growing crowd of neighbors. More people were stepping out of their houses watching the spectacle unfold, and then the floodgates opened. While you're investigating, officer, you might want to check the homeowner association finances. A voice called from the crowd. I turned. It was Mrs. Rodriguez, one of the oldest residents in the neighborhood. Karen's been raising dues every year, but our street hasn't been repaired in a decade. Yeah, Mr. Henderson chimed in. She fined me last month for having a flag on my porch, but somehow her property is exempt from rules. The police paused, now interested. Karen's face paled. That's irrelevant, is it, Jeff? My lawyer friend spoke up. Because I happen to know that misuse of homeowner association funds is a felony offense. A new kind of energy rippled through the crowd. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everyone. Karen had ever wrong. She tried to fine me for having my garage door open for too long. Someone else shouted. She threatened to have my dog removed because he looked dangerous. Another neighbor added, she tried to evict my grandmother. Someone else yelled. Karen was trapped. The realization hit her all at once. She had lost authority. I was just enforcing the rules, she stammered. The police officer flipped his notebook shut. Well, that's interesting, because we're about to take a thorough look at those rules. Karen went completely silent. She knew what was coming. In the meantime, the officer continued, we're going to need you to come with us. The moment those words left his mouth, the entire neighborhood erupted into cheers. Karen Wilkinson, homeowner association tyrant, neighborhood dictator, and suburban bully, was finally being held responsible. As the officers escorted her toward the patrol car, she whipped around a glare at me. This is your fault, she spat. You think you won? I'll be back. I leaned against my tank, smirking. Good luck with that. As the police car pulled away, the neighborhood cheered. Mike clapped me on the back. That, he said, was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. And yet, somehow, this wasn't over. Because the police investigation was only beginning. After Karen was taken away in the police car, I expected things to calm down. Maybe a court date, a few fines, and the story. I was wrong. By the next morning, the entire homeowner association board was in full panic mode. People were scrambling, emails were being deleted, and the neighborhood group chat was blowing up. Did you hear? One message read, the police seized homeowner association records last night. Another text followed. Karen was using homeowner association funds for personal expenses. This is bad. And then the bombshell. The city is getting involved. I stared at my phone. The city. That's when Mike banged on my door. You need to see this, he said, shoving his phone in my face. The local news was covering it. Homeowner Association president under investigation for fraud. The headline read. The report was brutal. Not only had Karen been stealing homeowner association funds into her personal accounts, but she had also issued thousands of dollars in fake fines targeting homeowners who refused to comply with her ridiculous rules. And it got worse. The police found discrepancies in tax filings that meant embezzlement. Karen wasn't just a power-hungry homeowner association president anymore. She was now facing serious criminal charges. The neighborhood chat exploded. She took money from our maintenance fund. Someone wrote, "No wonder our sidewalks are falling apart. I had to pay a $500 fine for my lawn being too tall, and she just kept the money." Another neighbor raged. Then came the class action lawsuit. By the end of the week, over 50 homeowners had banded together to sue the homeowner association, demanding their money back. And guess who they wanted as the face of the case? "Dude, Jeff, my lawyer buddy, said over lunch. You realize you're basically the guy who started all of this, right?" I groaned. "I just wanted to park my truck." "Yeah, well, you're the guy who took down a corrupt homeowner association." Mike smirked. "Not bad for a guy with a tank." Karen was gone, but her mess was only getting worse. The morning after the scandal broke, homeowner association board members were panicking. I could hear in the whispers outside my house, see it in the desperate closed-door meetings at the clubhouse. They weren't just worried about Karen anymore. They were worried about themselves, because Karen hadn't been stealing alone. And now, the city was investigating everyone. "It's a disaster, Jeff," my lawyer buddy said, scanning his phone. "The homeowner association board just hired a legal team to fight the lawsuit." I asked. "No," he said, "to fight each other." Turns out once Karen was arrested, the board members started betraying each other. Some cut plea deals, spilling everything in exchange for leniency. Others lawyered up, refusing to cooperate. The result? Pure chaos. The city froze homeowner association funds while they investigated, which meant all maintenance stopped, trash piled up, landscaping went wild, and homeowners realized they were paying dues to an organization that might not exist in a month. And then came the final shock. The city was considering dissolving the homeowner association entirely. I wasn't expecting the call. When it came, Mr. Carter, voice asked, "This is Assistant City Attorney Lisa Tran. We need to speak with you." "About what?" I asked. "Your homeowner association's legal troubles," she said. "We'd like you to testify at the upcoming hearing." I stared. "Testify? You're the one who brought this to light," she said. "Your statement could determine whether the homeowner association survives." I wasn't expecting this. The petty battles, the fake violations, even the tank. That was just Karen being Karen. But this was about taking down an entire corrupt system. "You in?" Jeff asked. I thought about everything Karen had done to me, about the neighbors she had harassed, about the money she had stolen. Then I thought about the look on her face when she was arrested. I grinned. "Oh, I'm in." The city council chamber was crowded. Journalists, homeowners, city officials. Everyone wanted to see how this ended. The hearing wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about whether the entire homeowner association would be shut down. At the front of the room, a row of sweating, nervous homeowner association board members sat at a long table, flanked by their attorneys. Most of them looked exhausted, like they hadn't slept in days. One seat was empty. Karen's. Because Karen wasn't just facing civil lawsuits anymore. She was facing actual felony charges. A hush fell over the room as the city attorney took the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we are here today because this homeowner association, under the leadership of Karen Wilkinson, has engaged in fraud, embezzlement, and widespread abuse of homeowners. Our investigation uncovered over $200,000 in misused funds, dozens of illegal fines, and a pattern of financial misconduct spanning years." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some homeowners looked furious, others just stunned. One woman wiped away tears. She had been fined thousands of dollars over the years, and now she knew where the money had gone. Then the attorney turned to me. "Mr. Carter, please take the stand." I walked up, feeling every eye in the room on me. I had never testified in anything before, but I knew one thing. This was the moment. Karen lost everything. "Mr. Carter," the attorney asked, "can you tell us how this all started?" I took a breath. "It started with a fraudulent violation over my truck." I looked at the board members, some of whom refused to meet my gaze. But it didn't stop there. Karen targeted me. She fined me. She tried to block my driveway. She got my company's fleet permit revoked. And when I still wouldn't bow to her, she tried to steal my legally parked property in the middle of the night. The audience gasped. One board member rubbed his temples, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. And when she failed, I continued, she was arrested. And that's when we all learned the truth. Karen wasn't just a homeowner association tyrant. She was a criminal. The attorney nodded. And what do you believe should happen to this homeowner association? I looked at the crowd. My neighbors, my friends, the people Karen had harassed for years. Then I said the words I knew would finalize the deal: burn it to the ground. The city's decision came faster than anyone expected after hearing the testimonies, reviewing the evidence, and seeing just how deep Karen's fraud ran. The ruling was clear. The homeowner association was officially terminated. Just like that, Karen's control crumbled. No more penalties. No more ridiculous rules. No more threats from a power-hungry tyrant. The neighborhood was finally free. The moment the ruling was announced, cheers erupted from the crowd. People hugged, laughed, and even popped open a bottle of champagne right there in the city hall parking lot. But the best part, Karen had no home to return to. Without the homeowner association to protect her, she was just another homeowner. And she had more rivals than friends. The very people she had terrorized for years wasted no time making her life unbearable. Lawsuits piled up. She was personally sued by dozens of homeowners for illegally fining them. The bank repossessed her house after frozen homeowner association accounts meant she couldn't pay her mortgage, and the final ultimate embarrassment, the same city council that revoked the homeowner association offered me her old position. You want to be the new homeowner association president? They asked. I grinned. No, thanks, I said. I think we're all better off without one. And with that, I went home, parked my tank in my driveway, and finally, for the first time in years, enjoyed my peace and freedom. Karen was gone. The homeowner association was dead. And I had won.